If you've ever fled a ball in the middle of the night, your tight bodice clinging to your sweaty skin, your eyes smeared with charcoal eyeliner, and your heart silently bleeding, then, my dear, you know what I mean. If not, I recommend you settle into your chair, because this is one of those stories that warms you to the core, if you know what I mean. On that sultry spring night, I left the gas-lit ballroom of Larrington Mansion with a bitter taste on my lips, and my steps hurried over the gravel of the garden. The orchestra still played cheerful waltzes, and the guests' false laughter mingled with the warm breeze. But I just wanted to disappear. What I saw on that balcony took my breath away. William, the man with whom I'd exchanged vows by candlelight, embraced by my cousin Josephine with the audacity to laugh together when they noticed me. My chest throbbed with anger. My teary eyes didn't stop me from walking resolutely through the hallways of the house toward the stables. I grabbed one of the family horses, a black chestnut I trained myself. I mounted it bareback, as if the world had gone up in smoke behind me. Dawn was already curling over the dirt road, the low mist kissing the fields and forest around it. The path was familiar, but the darkness made it a labyrinth. Then, on a treacherous curve, I heard the dull click of a hoof and felt the horse lose its balance. I fell. I rolled in the mud, my dress soaked with dew and my soul even dirtier than the hem of my skirt. I staggered to my feet, breathing heavily, my body burning in places that hadn't even hurt before. The silence was total. No cicadas, no owls, just solitude. Until a deep sound shattered the stillness, the roar of a coal-fired engine, slow, measured. I thought I was delirious. But then, through the mist, a modern carriage appeared, one of those imposing steam-powered freight vehicles. Large, black, gleaming in the overcast moonlight. The machine stopped a few meters away. The acetylene headlights cut through the fog like a beam of truth in a world of lies. And that was when he appeared. He got off the cab with the calm of someone who commands time. Tall, broad-bodied, beneath a white shirt partially open at the chest, worn linen pants, and leather boots that sank into the mud. As he bent down to check a gear, I saw the outline of his back stretch and felt something rise in my belly. A sudden, voracious heat that not even the early morning chill could contain. He walked over to me, opened the small access ladder, and held out his hand. His gaze was direct, penetrating, and straightforward. "Are you all right, miss?" he said in a deep, scratchy voice, as if born to send shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath, feigning a slight irony to hide the despair burning in my chest. "And do you usually come to the aid of any lady lost in the middle of the night?" He smiled with one corner of his mouth resting his arms on the metal frame of the cabin. "Only when it's worth the risk." That knocked me off my feet. It wasn't the words, it was the way he looked at me, as if he already knew what lay beneath my corset. I climbed onto the cab with a chill on my neck and an indecent certainty that this night would still burn. Inside, the smell of tanned leather, polish, and tobacco enveloped me like an unwanted embrace, and yet comforting. I sat on the narrow bench, the wet fabric of my dress clinging to my thighs as he turned the valves with precision. Steam whistled around us like an impatient sigh. "Running away from the rain? Or something else?" he asked, his eyes never leaving the road. "Running away from me, perhaps, from a love that turned to poison. I bet that love is corroding with regret now." "I doubt it. He's too busy with my cousin." Silence, but not the cruel kind. It was dense, heavy, almost complicit. The road wound its way between ancient trees and dangerous curves. The branches touched the roof of the vehicle like curious fingers. He stopped the carriage at a recess in the road, where the fog seemed thickest. He got out to check the boiler, and I stood there, watching through the oval-shaped windows. The way his shirt clung to his torso, the veins in his forearms, the firmness of his movements. My little flower twitched shamelessly, if you know what I mean. I took off my boots and propped my feet on the dashboard. When he returned, he let out a deep sound, somewhere between laughter and provocation. Too comfortable, aren't you? I only feel comfortable where I feel safe, I replied, without taking my eyes off him. He moved closer, his face inches from mine, his breath touching my skin. What if I told you this cab isn't the safest place in the world? I'd say I've been in far worse places. More silence, but this time filled with desire. And then he turned off the engine. Night descended upon us like a veil, and he simply stepped out of the carriage. I followed, as if following a primal call. The rain was beginning to thicken, heavy drops running down my cleavage, my hair, my arched back. He was there, leaning against the hot body of the police car, as if that piece of the world belonged to him. We approached without saying a word. I reached out my hand. He took it firmly and pulled me close. My body fit against his as if we were made for each other. The cold metal on my back, the warmth of his chest against my breasts. His hands slid down my hips as if deciphering a secret. They rose to the nape of my neck and stopped. The kiss came like a whispered promise in the darkness. Slow, warm, deep. And you, would you have the courage to surrender yourself to the unknown like this, in the middle of the night, under rain and desire? If this story sparked something inside you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, because the hottest part, oh, that's yet to come. My hand found its way without waiting for permission. I slowly climbed his arm, feeling the wet fabric of his shirt clinging to his warm skin, the contours of his firm muscles, the hairs raised by the early morning chill. This man wasn't just carrying cargo in his steam carriage, he carried weight in his soul and a raw desire in his body. The kiss, previously restrained, gained rhythm and heat. The rain fell with relish on our backs, seeping between our clothes, running down our skin like invisible fingers. And still, neither of us pulled back. He lowered his hand to my hips firmly, a raw, direct grip that made me shiver inside. The pleasure was as sudden as it was indecent. I felt my breasts swelling beneath my corset, sensitive as if they had a life of their own. My little flower throbbed in time with the thunder. Everything around me seemed to have disappeared. The world was just that moment. Rain, steam, desire, sweat, and the heat he ignited within me with the mere touch of his eyes. He pressed me against the carriage's bodywork, cold as steel, a stark contrast to the warm body dominating me. It was clothing over clothing, but it felt like skin against skin. The kiss turned into a gentle bite. His breath touched my neck like a promise. My body trembled not from the cold, but from anticipation. When I opened my eyes, I met his. They were too dark. There was no rationality there anymore. Only desire, tension, silence, and fire. He cupped my face with both hands. He ran his thumb slowly over the corner of my mouth, as if trying to erase a memory or mark his territory. I no longer knew who he was, nor why I'd run away from the ball that night. I only knew that being there was forbidden, and that was exactly what made him feel so good. The rain was thinning, but the heat between us didn't dissipate. He pulled away slowly, like someone holding a bomb about to explode. He looked to the side, cleared his throat, and said softly, "You're playing with fire, miss." I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my legs. I ran my wet fingers through my hair, now plastered to my neck, and replied, "Fire is what I left behind. This here makes me want to burn by choice." He didn't answer, but the look, oh, the look said it all. We climbed back into the carriage's box in silence. He pulled the lever hard, and the vehicle took off as if the road knew what had just happened. Sitting there beside him, still damp, still throbbing, I realized I no longer wanted to be rescued. I wanted to lose myself with him. The path wound between damp trees, the mist creeping like a secret. I could still feel his lips on my neck, the pressure of his fingers on my hips, but now something had changed. The heat remained, but he seemed distant, silent, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his posture rigid, the same man, but with a veil over his soul. Dawn was giving way to dawn. Light was beginning to filter through the branches. My feet were still bare, my damp clothes clinging to my body like a second skin. My hair clung to my face and lap. His hands were firmly on the steering wheel, his jaw tense, as if fighting something internal I couldn't reach. My eyes scanned the cabin. A picture of Saint Christopher tied with a string to the dashboard, a worn jacket tossed on the back seat. Nothing else. No letter, no portrait. No trace of another world beyond the road. My voice escaped me in a whisper. "Why did you leave the mounted guard?" He didn't answer. He didn't even look away, but he gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Sorry, it was just silly curiosity." I tried to soothe. "It's just, you don't seem like the kind of man who just drives around. There's something in there and I wanted to understand." He exhaled sharply. He didn't smile. He didn't mock. He just said dryly, "Does that change anything?" I swallowed. The sentence pierced me like a blade. "Number, I just thought that after yesterday. Yesterday was yesterday. Today is the highway." It was as if he had slammed on the brakes on our connection mid-curve. I looked out the window, trying to hide the burning sensation on my face. A small bird cut through the cloudy sky. Outside, the drizzle was falling again, as if nothing had happened. But inside me, everything had happened. "Do you always do that?" I blurted. "See someone as if they were the last soul in the world, and then act as if they had no meaning?" This time, he looked, but his gaze was hard. "You want to know who I am? I'm the type who lives among dust and smoke. I see too much. I promise too little. I lie even less. Yesterday was good. But it doesn't change who I am. And what are you?" He turned his face away and replied coldly, "A problem." That hurt. But worse, it awakened me even more, because he was made of layers, of old wounds and long silences. I wanted to know what was behind that wall. Because I knew that behind the rude man, there was something that hurt beautifully. "Everyone has a past," I murmured. "And some should stay buried," he countered. The road now narrowed through denser woods. The rain returned gently, as if caressing the earth. I wanted to touch him, but his body felt surrounded by invisible thorns. Still, I wanted to try. We stopped at a makeshift overlook, the valley ahead shrouded in low clouds. He turned off the engine. He stood there, staring into space. "I once believed I could change the way things ended," he said suddenly. "I once tried to fix the world, until I realized it wasn't my place. And now? Now I just drive, and I don't let anyone sit next to me for more than a short stretch." I turned my face to him. "Then why did you let me get on?" He didn't answer, but his look said it all. Because I was the risk he was willing to take. And, perhaps for that very reason, I was the risk he most feared repeating. The road seemed longer after that overlook. Rian, yes. Now I knew his name, kept his eyes on the road, his hands on the wheel, and his soul miles away. We were together, yet separated, and it wasn't because of the bench between us. It was because of the wounds he didn't want to show. We stopped at a roadside gas station, old, smelling of burnt coal and stale coffee. He went in first. I stayed outside. It was then that I saw a motorized carriage approaching. 2 men got out. One of them, with a crooked hat and faded shirt, looked straight at the black carriage. Then he looked at me. "Is that machine Rian's?" My eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "Rian?" I asked hesitantly. "Yeah. That's the black carriage. And now? Who is this man really? What's he hiding, and why do so many people seem to know him? Tell me in the comments what you think is coming next, and don't forget to leave that nice like. The final part is coming hot, really hot. The dawn hung thickly like an ancient woolen blanket over the dirt road. The wind, warm and humid, whispered secrets through the twisted branches of the trees that lined the small kerosene station. Aurora remained leaning against the side of the locomotive, her eyes fixed on the silent figure of Gael, who was dragging on his cigarette with the slowness of those who carry too many sins on their chest. The dim light of the lamp, hanging from an iron hook, outlined the austere contours of his face, half shadow, half revelation. She approached without a word, the silence more eloquent than any lament. Their hands met as if by habit, but there was no longer innocence there, only the rawness of what is felt too much, desired too much, and understood too little. "Are we going to pretend this all didn't happen?" she whispered, her voice choked with fear and desire. Gael exhaled slowly through his mouth, the smoke dancing like a specter before her eyes. "I can pretend a lot, Aurora, except you." The words floated between them like a belated promise. Time seemed to dissolve. And when he stood, imposing, she already knew she would be his once more, as if she had never stopped being his. She threw herself into his arms with fury and hunger. Her mouth found his urgently, and their bodies collided as if the world were ending. Gael spun her around firmly and pressed her against the body of the old locomotive. The cold metal contrasted with the searing heat of his hands, which ran down her back, tugging at the fabric of her dress with avidity. Each button came loose with the dry sound of passion held back for too long. The air smelled of wet earth, kerosene, and sin. The sound of the night was interrupted only by hoarse sighs, the creaking of trees, and the snap of clothing being hastily removed. Gael lifted Aurora onto his lap, pressing her body against his, with the dexterity of someone who had already memorized her. His breath fanned hotly against her neck, marking every inch of her skin with memory. She clung to him like someone clutching a harbor about to disappear into the mist. Inside the cabin, the flickering light of the lamp cast dancing shadows over them both. Gael laid her on the narrow bunk, their skin pressed together, their eyes fixed. It was more than desire. It was farewell. It was as if their bodies were saying goodbye without the courage to use words. His hands roamed Aurora's curves with a wild reverence, like someone trying to save a map before scorching the earth. She moaned softly, muffled, biting her lower lip. With every movement, every touch, the world fell apart around her. There was no road, no escape, no lies, only the present, raw and burning. "You destroy me," he murmured, his lips touching her shoulder like a prayer. "Then take me whole before you go," she replied, unable to contain the tremor that rose from her legs to her heart. And he took her. He took everything. The fear, the anger, the false name, the kiss in the rain, the pain she thought she'd forgotten. He took her with each slow thrust, with each whispered kiss. He took her as if apologizing to his own body. Afterward, when their exhausted bodies calmed, she rested her head on his chest. Gael's heart beat slow, heavy, like an ancient drum marking the end of a ritual. The road outside slept under the blanket of dawn. Inside the truck, two naked bodies embraced as if it were the last time. And perhaps it was. When sleep came, it came without resistance. Aurora closed her eyes, her face buried in the crook of his neck. She cried, not out of weakness, but because she knew she had experienced something too rare to last, because she knew that at sunrise everything would become a memory. And so it was. When day broke, the cab was empty. There was no sign of Gael, only his jacket, neatly folded on the seat. On the dusty dashboard, a message written with his finger. "You were my escape route." Aurora smiled. She cried. she understood everything. For him, she had been a risk. For her, he had been the point of no return. And you, who stayed this far, tell me, have you ever experienced something that began with a lie but ended with the truth? I want to know where you're watching from. Leave your comment below, like it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. It was a pleasure following you on this journey. Until the next video.